Today, this topic will be on the Babylonian Captivity and return. Let us put this in perspective. We know that Babylonian Captivity and return is in the third period. But if we can put it in better perspective, which I will draw for you, because the Babylonian Captivity and return is in the third period of Jesus' genealogy. So we have in Matthew that's why we encourage you to buy or to try to purchase the 3 books, right? Book 3, Book 4, and Book 5. This is Book 5. The Promise of Eternal Covenant. Book 3, Unquenchable Lamp. And Book 4, The Profound Providence of God. Okay? So in the first, Book 3, we have Abraham. We are told in Matthew 1 to 17, especially in verse 17, that Jesus' genealogy is divided into 3 periods. So it starts with Abraham and ends with David. The end of his rule in Hebron. Okay, in 1023, Abraham, his birth date was in 2166 BC. So this would be the first period. The second period would be till 597 BC, and that is right smack in during the period of deportation. The third, this is the second period, and then the third period. Okay, so this third period is where we are at, and the coming of Jesus Christ was in 4 BC. So let's go through the 4 different subtopics I would like to take you through for this study. One would be the timeline, which now I'm going to go through on the board for you, so you have a clearer linear idea of where it occurred. Then the cause of the deportation and return, as well as the key events surrounding it. And finally, the redemptive significance. In a way, it's like the relevance to us as believers. Why do we need to study? Because this is, it's history of the Jewish people. So what has that got to do with us? It's like, why should I stay here for another hour to learn about how they are captured and returned? Okay, so we're going to try to understand the relevance to us. In terms of the timeline, we know that the first captivity happened in 605. This is the first deportation. Okay. The second deportation is the start of the third period, which is at 597. Then we have the third deportation at 586 BC. And this is a horrible time because that is when the temple was destroyed. So between 605 and 597 BC was about a period of 8 years. And between 597 to 586, a period of 11 years. So it happens within 19 years, this deportation. The first return was in 537 BC. It took place after 49 years from the last time that they were deported. Okay. You would think that they would be in a hurry to come back, right? But no. There was a gap of 79 years before they came back the second time. It's in 4-5. BC. This is the second return. And finally, the third return, which was slightly better, 14 years later, was 441. So this is roughly the timeline that we can see here. 444, yeah, correct. The mouth and the writing somehow misaligned. Okay, so we have the timeline. Okay, within this linear timetable, we can see where we're at. All right. So what was the cause of the deportation? The Bible tells us that the cause was actually due to two evils in Jeremiah 2:13. We've gone through that already. So 8 years, 11 years, 49 years, 79 years, and 14 years. That's another way of looking at this. Okay, it's just that in a PowerPoint, it's very hard to see this. So it's this way you can see it across. God allowed them to go into captivity because of their evil. Jeremiah is a major prophet during the time before the deportation and during the deportation. He expressed it in this way, that there were two evils. They have forsaken God and they have hewn themselves cisterns. Cisterns, are water containers, right? Can you imagine if you were to make water containers that cannot hold water? So essentially, in a spiritual sense, redemptive sense, okay, these two evils were manifested in idolatry as well as the sin of not keeping the seventh day and the seventh year, as Pastor Samuel has spoken to us about. We know that in terms of idolatry on the Mount Sinai, remember when they came out, when did they come out? They came out around here, right? 1446 BC. They were camping Mount Sinai for about 1 year, so maybe around there. That was when the Sinaitic covenant was given. So in this reference, Jeremiah was saying that, hey guys, you guys have forgotten about the commandments that God gave us, that we should not have other gods, we should not make carved image, and we should not bow to them or serve them. Okay, so Jeremiah said, you not only did this, but you have worshipped what I told you not to worship, but the idols that you made are as many of your cities in Judah. And he went on to explain it even worse. He says, not only cities. So cities is quite, in a country you have cities. And within the cities is street, right? In Singapore we have so many streets. But we are one city because Singapore is city itself, country. Can you imagine is the number of cities and according to the number of streets, how devastating it is to God that this God who brought them out of their bondage in Egypt way back in 1446 would have to tolerate these people having idol every which place you see, in every street corner. There was an idol. It does not mean that, when they sinned, God did not send his prophets. You will realize that even though later Pastor was explaining to us, right, that for this period here, there was no prophetic word. Actually, between this period, as in the book is fantastic. There's this, I'm trying to plug the book now, but there's this fantastic diagram right in the front that tells us about how many prophets there were that came and tried to tell the people of God to repent, to return, to come back, to not focus on their idols and idol worship and not to forsake God. Okay? So there is a whole wealth of information there. The Bible tells us that how God sends his prophets were rising early and sending them. That means God was not a God that waited till it was too late. The Bible says he rose early. Okay? That means he gave his people time to repent, to come back. The second sin was not keeping the Sabbath and the seventh year. This is a literal, it shows us that, sometimes we tell ourselves, okay, I'm not sure what I'm doing right or wrong in our walk of faith. But here God makes it very clear. He says, when you don't keep my Sabbath and my Sabbath day, you are contravening my commandments. So it is a sin. So we have to reflect. Okay? This law also applies to Sabbath year, and pastors have really explained to us what is a Sabbath year. 6 years of working, 7th year we take a rest. So because of their sin, God says, okay, we'll cast you out. And that's why you have the 3 deportations. They were cast out of the land that God promised Canaan, the promised land. He says, not only will you be cast out of the promised land, but you will be out of it for 70 years. The instrument of God's judgment, as Pastor also was going through with us the political history, he used King Nebuchadnezzar. In fact, for all of the deportation, it was under the Babylonian King Nebuchadnezzar. He came in the first year. Can you imagine how quick he was to do God's work? The first year of his kingship, he came against Judah in 605 BC. Let us now look at the key events in the deportation. Firstly, you can see that the first deportation, people were carried away. So you have Jehoiakim. He was the son of Josiah, which is the king before. If you were here last time that we studied, we talked about Josiah as ending the second period of Jesus' genealogy. With him was carried the royal family, nobles, as well as Prophet Daniel. Okay, as Pastor Josh Samuel said, Daniel and Ezekiel was actually prophesying and giving out God's word while they were in captivity. Then the second deportation was Jeconiah. Jeconiah is actually the son of Joachim. And his, of course, given name is Joachim. That's why you can see that, the father and son. With him, when Nebuchadnezzar came to attack them, his family, servants, officials were taken away. Captains and mighty men of valor. It's actually 10,000 of captains and 7,000 of mighty men. There was just a mistake there. Not mistake, but I forgot to put the 7,000. Now I did a bit of searching. I said, okay, captains, how many soldiers would they command? So when I did a Google search, they said between 60 to 200 soldiers with one captain. Then I Google search Singapore. We have about 72 active soldiers. So if you were to divide by the maximum 200, it means that there were 360 captains for the Singapore Army. I mean, it's very simplistic, I know, because I'm not in the army. So maybe, the guys here might beg to differ. But can you imagine, Singapore, based on the calculation of 200 men under each captain, you have 72,000 active soldiers. Here we are, 10,000 captains were taken into captivity. So 10,000 times 200 is 2 million. They were in charge of 2 million soldiers. Amazing. Then I did a search on Israel. Right now, the active military personnel is 172,000. Out of a population of 8 million, while our population is about 5 plus million. So this is some of the trivia that to give you. Mighty men means people who are able and willing to fight. So there's 7,000 of them. Craftsmen, Smith, 1,000. Prophet Ezekiel was taken at the second deportation. The third deportation was during the rule of Zedekiah. He was the final king under southern Judah. He was carried away in great distress, eyes gouged out, but not before he saw his children, sons being killed in front of him. Along with him, besides himself, pitifully, there was all the rest were taken except the poorest of the land. You will notice something about this, that in the Bible, aside from the captains and craftsmen, actually there is no record of how many people were taken. But we can assume quite a lot because of the fact that there were 10,000 captains. But later you will see that in the returns, God specifies numbers. Okay? So that is a highlight for you to note. In a way, when we are deported, we are falling into sin, right? We are not doing God's work, we are not believing in God well. And by the virtue of the fact that it's 19 years versus the, if you look at this, is I believe 193 years it took to return. Okay, if you add up all these numbers to return. How easy it is to fall into sin, right? Sometimes, like we ourselves realize we just went to church today on Sunday, and then before we know it, just step out of church, we are already cursing the driver in front of us, you know? Or when we go to work and there are things that occupies us, and we have to tell white lies, or we get upset with our colleague, and then we grumble to another person, we attack the character. It's very easy, but in order to come back to God, it takes a long, long time. Why do you think these people, you know, if you look at the deportation, they were the highest authority. Kings, captains, nobles, officials. Likewise, when they were deported, God was showing exactly how is it like to break His covenant. He's showing it in adversity. This is His total reason, His perfect reason, and His only reason. And I guess I'm jumping the gun because it's found in the later slides. Okay, let's continue. In terms of the three deportation, there is also the temple. The deportation also represent the three stages of destruction of the temple. In the first deportation, the Bible tells us that some articles were taken. We all know that the articles in the temple are all very important because each represents the redemptive work that will be undertaken by Jesus Christ. So it is not a small thing to say that some articles are taken. I mean, come on, you're going to miss a pot, a washing basin, so what? Get over with it. But the Bible emphasizes this and records it in the Bible to tell us that there is significance. In the second deportation, the Bible tells us that when Nebuchadnezzar returned to Judah and Jerusalem, he cut away all the treasures in God's temple. And not only that, anything that was gold, he cut into pieces. The third deportation, I guess there's no more gold to cut, back to his temple, nothing else to steal, so he burnt it. He destroyed the temple of God. So as I was saying just now, the deportation was God's mercy to tell and show and help his chosen people understand that they have sinned by breaking the covenant. And Jeremiah referenced it to the Sinaitic covenant, because he says, look, the words of the covenant, if you don't obey, you're cursed. Okay, that is Jeremiah 11:3-5. But if you obey, then you will always remain in Canaan, right? You don't have to leave. You will be in the promised land. And the covenant in Mount Sinai was, remember the commandments, all the laws, as well as God gave them a pattern for the tabernacle, because the tabernacle is the essence and the center of God's covenant. So through the deportation, if you can see, right, that they lost their land, because they all have to leave Canaan. They couldn't stay. So they lost their nationhood when they went to Babylon, because Babylon is not a nation. They're going to a foreign place. They lost, the people were lost because their identity as God's people no longer there, and they lost the sovereignty that was provided by the temple of God. Because for the Israel, the temple is like the center of their activities. They go there to worship God, they go there to respect God, they go there to offer the offerings to God. So the temple of God being destroyed is very devastating. And the reason is because the temple is where God is. So many verses here that tells us how and why the temple represents God himself. It's because God meets his people there. That was the reason why the tabernacle was set up. And when the tabernacle was set up in Mount Sinai, God's glory came upon it to show them that, hey, I like what you've done, and I'm going to place my stamp of approval. I will be there. God eyes, ears, heart, and name. What more do you want? And God dwells. When I did research for all this and tried to study, it reminds me so much of the Garden of Eden. Remember when God breathed into man, he placed Adam in the Garden of Eden. Isn't going to Canaan what God did? He placed his chosen people in the land, right? And this land was a place where God would be at. So for the temple to be entirely destroyed, it must be so devastating to the people of God. That means God has left me. How do I worship? I'm going to Babylon. There's no temple. I'm not sure whether God is going to be there, because Jerusalem is supposed to be where we're supposed to worship him. But even though they were in such dire straits, yet God remembers. And that is the cause for the 3 returns. For the sake of its eternal covenant made with all our forefathers of faith, not only with Moses at Sinaitic covenant, but also with Abraham. Remember the covenant of torch, where we learned about land, about people, and as God is my king, my God. That is sovereignty. It means accepting God as my king, and I will obey his words. So God remembers his covenant, even to David, right? David here, to Solomon, his son. God says, if you will continue to obey like your father, there will always be a man on the throne, and the kingdom will last forever. Of course, we know that God is also talking about the kingdom of the coming Jesus Christ. So, in time, according to His word, according to the timing of His word, God remembers. And He allowed them to return after 70 years through Cyrus. This was a prophecy by Jeremiah for that Judah will return after 70 years, and for Israel that Cyrus or Persia would be his instrument to effect the return. And therefore, their return is surely going to be fulfilled. Just like God's house will be rebuilt. Let's look at some of the key events. In the first return, we know that it is actually Cyrus' second year. In the Bible, in Ezra, you will see the focus on the first year. That is because when Cyrus became king, it was 538. And when he became king, can you imagine how God works the world political events of Gentile kings according to His will? When he first became king, he rushed towards proclaiming that all in his kingdom who are Jews should go back and build God's house. So by the time they came back, it was 537. Okay, and that was Cyrus' second year. The leader that came back with in the first return was Zerubbabel. That's why the temple was named after him. And then Joshua was the high priest. 49,987 people came back. I would think that it's pretty miserable based on the 10,000 captains. Okay, and the fact that everybody was taken except the poor of the land. So a lot of people were carried away to Babylon, but 49,000 over came back, less than 50,000. In the second return, it was 79 years later. During the kingship of Artaxerxes, his 7th year, Ezra heard the call of God. He was also a prophet, and his writings are also in the Bible. He is a priest and scribe. And with him, 175 people, males, came back. And finally, the third return, 14 years later, was led by Nehemiah. He was the cupbearer for King Artaxerxes, one person in the record. Perhaps other people came back with him, but the Bible recorded he alone came back. For the temple, we can see that firstly upon the return, important matter was because they were to come back to build the temple, they started to build God's temple. It started the next year, 536 BC, but there was strong opposition. So much so that they stopped the temple building. For 20 years, and was restarted in 520. It was restarted because of the intervention of Haggai, who heard the word of God and said, guys, come on, you're supposed to be here to build God's temple. How can you worship God without a temple? Let's get going. So within 4 years and 5 months, in 560 BC, it was built, it was up. We would think that returning to Canaan, we all learned that it's the promised land. But you will notice that in all the first, second, third return, there was much opposition. There was a lot of the tilling that the people of God has to do. Remember, the Garden of Eden, God sent Adam out when he sinned. A bit like deportation, you sin, you didn't obey my word, sin. Judah did not obey God's word, God says, okay, in my mercy I got to send you out so that you can till. Likewise, even though they came back to the promised land, they had to till the ground. And the second return, it was all focused on worship and service. The worship and service includes collection of free will offering, the teaching of God's law, and reformation to prayer, repentance, and obedience. Third return was the establishment of the city wall. Okay, the city wall is like a representative of a nation. You were guarded by a wall. So its nationhood is to block external forces coming to attack you. The wall, despite fierce opposition, was also completed in 52 days. So in the returns, we can see that did Judah do anything? They were in Babylon. Can they do anything to help themselves? They were captives. Therefore, in order for them to return, God has to do it, right? So God remembers. And because God remembers, He goes about with His providence in order to effect the change. He sends His word. We will see that as you read the book, and as and if you don't have the book, when you read Chronicles, if you read Jeremiah, you read Ezekiel, you will see that God keeps on sending His word. Even when they were in captivity, Ezekiel, because remember Ezekiel was in captivity, Ezekiel exhorted them, Ezekiel reminded them, do you know that even though you're here in Babylon, God is with us? Okay, so remember that God is going to send us back. Remember and be faithful, even though you're in a strange land. So God's zeal and providence will surely accomplish whatever He set out to do. And we can see His zeal and providence in actually the whole deportation and returns process. If you look at the first deportation, it was God who said, I will send Nebuchadnezzar. Okay? It's not that Nebuchadnezzar feels all of a sudden in the first year says, well, there's a little country that I need to go against. And can you imagine? He was so insistent. He went against Judah 3 times. It's like overwhelming attack, don't you think? You hammer him once, he's sort of like, a bit half dead. The second time, and the third time, and you destroy the temple of God, the God that is the creator of this universe. Can you imagine? That because God's zeal and providence was behind it all. The third deportation, God Himself says, I will command and cause them to return to the city to fulfill the words that we said, that if you were to forsake me, okay, you will be deported out. You'll be carried away. In the first return, Cyrus was stirred in his heart, of course by God, aroused, and he was so excited by the Spirit of God that he issued a proclamation. And he says, everyone who belongs to the nation of Israel, who has given me everything. Right? Remember Pastor Samuel said, after Babylon, there was Persia. They conquered, they were like world conquerors then. He proudly proclaimed, okay, that God has given me all this to me. And this God that gave all this to me commanded me that you must go back to Jerusalem to build the temple. Second return, it was also the good hand of God that provided Artaxerxes the desire to beautify the temple of God. And the third return, Nehemiah was able to get permission to build up the city wall. So all this is by the zeal and providence of God. Likewise, if you were to look at what happens right during the key returns, all the three returns, God's providence and God's grace must be with us as we try to undertake the building of God's temple. In a way, this is so relevant to myself and quite a number of us because we are building God's temple, we are moving church. So there is a lot of relevance as we look at this situation. Okay, remember I told you that we're supposed to build in a house, that's what Cyrus said in Ezra 1:1-4. Not only are we supposed to literally build a house and set it up, we need to have the free will offerings in order for the temple sacrifices and in order for the materials to build up the house of God. So this building of God's house is actually God's command, including offering that we need to offer and the people that were needed. Under the 49/1,000, I'd like to highlight that 4,289 were priests and one was a Levite. We must realize that building the temple of God, the temple needs to be served, right? Needs to be ministers, there needs to be temple ministry. But you can see that there is these people who will be going back to serve God in the temple. So that is a highlight there for us. In terms of temple worship and service, that was the essence of the second return. Now, all these things are not like one following the other. It's just how the returns are recorded. You may not be building a temple now, a literal physical temple, but we are building the temple spiritually, right? Each and every day of our lives, we are building God's temple in our hearts, in our churches, in our nation. In temple worship, the Levites play a crucial role. And when Ezra came back with 1,735 males, he realized that there were no Levites that came along because out of the 175 males, there was only 2 priests, no Levites. And Levites play a very crucial role in temple ministry. They serve the high priesthood. Okay, so it's like our pastor. Priest is like our pastor. So you need Levites to help the pastor in the work of the church. They serve as officers, judges, gatekeepers, and singers. It's like our ministries in church, right? We have singers, choir, we have AV team, we have men's, women's group, we have cell group. All these are, we need leaders for them. They are the Levites. Okay? And because he saw that there were no Levites, he says this cannot do because the temple needs Levites to worship and serve God. The Levites are the ones that will lead the worship, that will help and assist, right? So he intervened, and by God's good hand, in the end, 38 Levites came with 220 Nethinims, which is servants. They brought together much gold and much offerings for the temple sacrifices. So this is part of temple worship and service to God. The law of God was taught, and reformation to consistent prayer, repentance, obedience, and separation. In the second return, you must realize that 79 years have passed. Yet, there was not a covenanted community in the house of God. There was a lot of sin still there. Likewise for us today, sometimes we can say, okay, I'm in a temple, I worship in church, I return, right? The house of God is built already. Then why are there still so much sin, so much problems in the temple of God? So, in terms for us, we need to take note of this second return and the requirements. The third return was building the city wall. The city wall is like a symbol of nationhood and the sovereignty of God. I like to use this example. It's like in Singapore, we have different embassies, right? Have you guys ever seen the US Embassy? It is like a fortress. Have you ever seen it? It's got walls, huge walls in front. I don't know whether it stands behind because I don't have the time. I was actually Googling it, and I was just impressed at the monstrosity that they have such a huge wall, because they were afraid of terrorism, right? Somebody bringing a bus full of explosives goes there and everybody dies or something like that, so you have the wall. Likewise, it's the same thing, right? You have this wall so that firstly you declare that this belongs to me. So in this embassy, even though they are in the midst of Singapore, that embassy is US led. Okay? Same thing. Right now, the temple, right? The temple is where? We are the temple. But we're right smack in the sinful world. Okay? So God says that you have to come out, right? But how do we come out physically? There's no way. We cannot come out physically till we go to heaven. Correct? Because we're still living in the sinful world. So therefore the temple around is our safe haven. It's a place where God says, I'm there, my name is there, and I'm your king and your God, and you're my people. So I will take care of you. Like in the US Embassy in Singapore. They are in Singapore. So Singapore rules cannot apply to the US Embassy. It's US Embassy, US rules. Likewise, the same thing. The temple is governed by God's rules, God's regulations. We as people, He's our God. But unfortunately, Ezekiel tells us this. He says, when you don't have the wall set up, it's like if the US Embassy has the wall and it's broken. It means I can just go in, right? Because they may not, one little Chinese woman just walk in, maybe they just happen not to have eyes open, I could have just gone in. And this was what happened that Ezekiel was writing about. Let us read this together because it's just so amazing that God is talking about His nation, His country that's supposed to be built up. Okay, this is the temple of God. And God says, Son of man, verse 7, right? So He brought me to the door of the court, and when I looked, there was a hole in the wall. We're talking about the court, the God's sanctuary, God's temple. Then He said to me, Son of man, dig into the wall. And when I dug into the wall, there was a door. He said to me, go in and see the wicked abominations which they are doing there. So I went in and saw, and there every sort of creeping, abominable beast, and all the idols of the house of Israel were portrayed all around on the walls. And there stood before them 70 men. How horrendous. What does it say? Of the elders of the house of Israel. God's leaders. And in their midst stood Josiah, the son of Shaphan. Each man, have you seen what the elders of the house of Israel do in the dark? Every man in the room of his idols. For they say, the Lord does not see us, the Lord has forsaken the land. And He said to me, turn again and you will see greater abominations that they are doing. So he brought me to the door, the north gate of God's house, and to my dismay, women were sitting there weeping for Tammuz. It's the Sumerian fertility god. Then he said to me, have you seen this, O son of man? Turn again, and you will see greater abominations than these. So he brought me into the inner court of Lord's house, and there at the door of the temple of the Lord, between the porch and the altar, were about 25 men with their backs towards the temple of God and their faces towards the east, and they were worshipping the sun towards the east. The temple of God, where God's eyes are, God's ears are, God's name is, God's glory, has been polluted. If we do not take the effort to preserve the temple that God says, I've given you this temple, build this temple, preserve it. It's, again, I hark back to the Garden of Eden. Remember when God gave Adam and Eve the garden? He said they're supposed to keep, right? Keep and tend. Essentially, God says that you need to protect this garden. However, because they did not protect it, they were able to let in the serpent who destroyed them in the end. So today we are studying the Babylonian Captivity. All these are facts, information, it's horrendous. I did not mention in the first part that this book 5 has 389 pages. And do you know how many pages is taken up to talk about the captivity and the return? 135 pages. More than 1/3. So this is to show you the significance of the deportation and the returns. It is relevant to us because we are God's children. Like Pastor Samuel said, right? We are heirs of the promise because of Abraham, because of Jesus Christ. We therefore can be the right to say that we are Abraham's children. And if we are Abraham's children, isn't this our journey? Isn't David our forefather? And when Judah, Israel was deported, you must remember that before the deportation of Judah, remember in 9, after David was Solomon, right? And after Solomon, in 930 BC, that was when the two nations, Israel split into two nations, northern Israel and southern Judah. And the genealogy actually from 930 continues the line of the covenanted people, which is southern Judah. Okay? All this is concerning southern Judah. The reason why also, even though Israel are God's children, they refuse to listen to God, and in 17, they were destroyed. So they never came back, unlike southern Judah. In spite of this, God says, guys, you are even committing greater sin than your sister, Israel. I thought that you would have more sense, you would love me more, you would understand that I've given you the covenant, but instead of seeing what has happened to northern Israel and repent, you commit even greater sin, and hence the deportation. Okay? It is significant because we are also God's temple. And the deportation and the return has the temple as the center. So it is relevant and of significance that we need to know this and how it applies to our Christian life. We also, as Pastor is saying, this has great redemptive history because right now we know that Jesus Christ has already come and we are waiting for the consummation at Jesus' second coming. And in the second coming, the Bible tells us in Revelation 21, 2 to 3, sorry, it's not 2 to 2, and 22, that there is the holy city of New Jerusalem. This New Jerusalem is a bride that's prepared for a husband, and her husband is Jesus Christ. And I heard a voice from heaven saying, "Behold, the tabernacle of God is with men, and He will dwell with them." Right? Remember, God says, "I need to dwell with you." That's why we have the temple. But in the end, you are going to be in a place where there is no U.S. embassy in the middle of foreign land. Every part of the land is going to be mine. And at that time, you don't need a temple because I'm the temple. Okay? In the kingdom of heaven. That it is also because of the last prophetic word. We now live in a time after the coming of Jesus Christ. We know that there is going to be a time when Jesus will come back again. Therefore, we need to take whatever word is given to us before He comes so that we can be ready for Him. Ezra, if you have purchased this book and the diagram, you will see that the Bible, especially a lot of the minor and major prophets, you know, the Old Testament, it ends with a lot of prophets, right? A lot of them are situated around this time. And the last of Ezra, he ended his prophecy in 420 BC. Okay? I got it from this book. In conclusion, what it means is that surely God's word will be fulfilled. Because when God says that even though you are carried away, I will bring you back. And in fact, Judah did return, and did return in 70 years. If you look at the fulfillment, remember the temple was destroyed in 586 BC? When the temple was rebuilt, it was 516, so exactly 70 years. That is from a temple perspective. But even if you look at that, the return, we know that they were deported 605. They came back at 530, and the temple was built when they started the temple, it was 536. So it looks like there's going to be 69 years, right? But when you include 605 is actually 70 years. Okay, so in terms of return. And this gives us a lot of hope. The hope that God will promise us the covenant that we will have eternal life through Jesus Christ, and that the heavenly kingdom awaits us. We know that through all His fulfillment of prophecy, through His zeal and providence, that even this will surely come to pass through Jesus Christ. Amen.